Okay, then, all right, do this. So we're thinking, we imagine, if this makes sense to us, that we're offering all the most marvelous thing to the Buddha as a request for the teachings, thinking like that. If that makes sense to you, think that way. And if it doesn't, don't.
Sashi perki yukseng meto tramri rablingi nidegyan padi sange shingdu mekte ulwagi rukunam da shingla jepaksho jetsun lama dam pakyenam keche kikala kien se tsin tri jita sampe jul jesin mala sab keche ki chapa vaptu so idam guru ratna mandala kamni atayami.
So take it away. Take it away, Tara or Lassie. Okay. So we just think. We're going to listen, think about, contemplate these concepts, these ideas, these instructions. Think about the meaning. And if we understand the meaning, then try to practice them. And if we don't understand the meaning, don't practice them. We're the boss. Thinking this way. We're the boss. I think we have a very strong feeling about spiritual viewpoints, spiritual philosophy. And somehow it's kind of like, you know, you've got to believe it because you're told, you know. No, not at all. So if it makes sense, take it on board. And if it doesn't, leave it there. If we remember that we are in charge, then we'll be very comfortable. So thinking, anyway, if you'd like, think we're listening to these teachings, these viewpoints coming from the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, coming from our lamas, their tradition, about how to, in this case, how to set up a daily practice, to take it as advice so that we can develop our amazing potential so we can be of benefit to others. Thinking like that, that will do. Okay. So this has come up. What I just said now was because someone emailed me and said they were very relieved to hear me say at the end of what we were discussing last week, and if this doesn't make sense, don't do it. I think we've got to stress that, you know, I mean, because what we're discussing here is completely coming from Tibet, which is coming from India, which is coming from the Buddha. It's got its own lineage. It's got the lineages there. And the thing is, if we remember, this is the logic we have to remember. If there is anything here, if there is anything in these instructions, so whether we understand the instructions or not, doesn't matter. That's not the point yet. If there is anything in these instructions that is merely ritual, that has no meaning, in other words, ritual is something that has no, in a way, we think of it as having no meaning, like of being essenceless. Oh, it's only a ritual. It's like very empty, very nothing, isn't it? If there is something in the Buddhist teachings, wherever you get them from, Tibet, China, Vietnam, Australia, doesn't matter. If there is anything that is said to be a practice, a piece of advice that doesn't help you, one, lessen your delusions, and two, grow your virtues, which is the essence of being a Buddhist. If it doesn't do that, then clearly it's not valid. So of course, immediately, we're not so sure because we're not familiar yet, you know. So we can see in Buddhism, there's many different approaches, many different traditions. You've got the Japanese style, which is very, you know, if you take the Zen one, it's very kind of, it seems very clean cut and kind of, you know, not many, and just sort of kind of, yeah, very clean cut. You've got the Thai version, you've got the Vietnamese version, you've got the Chinese version, you have Tibetan, and even among Tibetan, many different versions. Then if you tracked it back to India, you'd have different ways of presenting. It's exactly the same as any say, religious philosophy. If you go to a Christian church in Russia, if you go to a Christian church in Southern Baptist, Alabama in the United States, you wouldn't even recognize, because they're so completely different, isn't it? So let's look at what a ritual is, because this is what we're discussing here. We're doing lots of different things like sweeping the place, cleaning the place, preparing, doing your offerings. It just seems like lots of rituals. Because one of the things is when we think of spiritual, when we think of meditation, we think you sit down and you do something with your mind. That's it. But these are called preliminary practices. Preliminary to what? Preliminary to doing the actual practice of working on your mind. So I always use the example, if you go to Roger Federer, can you show me how to play tennis? And he looks at you and he can see that you're no way ready even to pick up a racket. You're 20 pounds overweight, you've got no stamina, you're completely a disaster. You want to play tennis, but you're not ready. So he's got to give you preliminary practices, doesn't he? And he'll say, go off and do some jogging and do this and go on a diet and learn nutrition. And you'll say, no, you didn't hear me, Roger. I want to learn how to play tennis. And he will repeat his answer. Then he explains why. And then oh, I understand. That's what these practices are. All of these practices are making offerings, sitting a certain way, doing a certain kind of visualization. All of these are preliminary. They're called nyungne. They're called nundro, preliminary practices. And that's the logic behind them. So of course, this might not exist. If you go to a Japanese center, like a Zen center, you're not going to hear about preliminary practices. If you go to a Thai center, you won't hear that either. Something's been cultivated in Tibet, which comes from the Tantric, the Vajrayana tradition in India, So the thing is, like all of this, if we don't understand the meaning, and then it's religion and we get guilty and we think we're supposed to do it, and then we feel bad if we don't do it properly, this is very typical of us, and it's kind of rather ridiculous. We have to understand why. So then let's look at this word ritual. It's kind of interesting. Actually, if you think about it, everything we do with our body, forget the speech, whatever we do with our body in daily life, eating, sitting on a chair, going to the toilet, it's basically, they're all rituals. They're things we've learned in our culture. Like in Tibet, in ancient Tibet, when you go to the toilet, you find a hole in the ground where you probably find 2 beams of wood, and there's a bigger space between you and the ground. You squat and you do some caca, But here you go into a bathroom with a nice shiny white bowl, and you lift up the lid and you sit politely, and no one watches you. And then you pull the chain, as we say in Australia, the old-fashioned. You have a chain, and then the water flushes it down. That's going to the toilet here, and then you've got to go to the toilet in Tibet. So they're clearly very different. If you saw each of the person doing those and not knowing what they were doing, you have no idea. What's a strange thing that person's doing? What are they squatting for? Why are you doing that? Why do you do this? If we don't, in other words, it's very simple. If you don't know the meaning of those physical actions, it just looks mysterious, doesn't it? It's obvious. But because we know the meaning of going to the toilet or of going to the bathroom, as they say in America, then we take it for granted. We don't call it a ritual. We call it something serious. It's real. Well, let's say you meet a Tibetan person for the first time who's never met a Western person, and then you thrust your hand out at them. You point your fingers at them about kind of navel level. Your arm is very rigid, and the fingers are pointed outwards. They might think you're trying to kill them. They don't know it's called shaking a hand. And you grab their hand and they're really puzzled. They feel a bit kind of like you're being right aggressive. And then you shake their hand up and down and their hand's all kind of floppy. They have no idea what you are doing. This is really obvious. But because we're used to it, we don't call it a ritual. We call it shaking hands because we know the meaning. This is proving emptiness, people. Every tiny thing. If you did a movie of your physical actions throughout an entire day, and if you didn't know the meaning of it, you would look like a mad person. You just lying down, then you sit up, and then you get out of bed and you put your arms up and you're so-called stretching. Then you sit on this white bowl and you go here, then you pick your nose and then you blur. If you don't know the meaning, they're a series of random physical actions, aren't they? That's what we call a mad person, walking down the street, talking to themselves, pointing to the sky. You know, they look like a mad person. I mean, they might have some common sense in their mind about what they're doing, but it doesn't look like any rituals we've recognized. So we call them insane. So everything is like that. So everything is a ritual. It's the way you've learned how to do it in your culture. Your mummy taught you, you know. But because we take them for granted, then we see it as concrete and we see it as real and self-existent. We don't think of it as a ritual. We think of it as doing something, and we think it's got meaning. So, you know, picking up, getting 8 bowls and making them all nice and clean, and then putting them on the altar with a jug of water and pouring water into them and saying a Sanskrit mantra. Yes, that is a ritual. We're going to talk about that today. That is a ritual, definitely. Now, if it doesn't have meaning, then how ridiculous to do it. You're an insane person. If it's just empty action with no meaning, you are a ridiculous person to do it. I totally agree. So it's maybe a brand new thing. You've never put 8 bowls on an altar and put water in them and said a Sanskrit mantra over them and thought certain things. But if you decide that you want to buy into that ritual, you decided, you trust the teachers that you're learning from, and they explained their reasoning why you would do this preliminary practice, then you would start doing it and you would buy into it. We're doing that all the time. You learn yoga. Maybe you've never heard of yoga, never heard of such a thing as exercises that help your body and help your mind. And you see persons stretching and poking and leaning backwards and standing on their hands. You would definitely think they're mentally ill because you don't recognize any of these physical movements. But when you learn the meaning of yoga, suddenly it takes meaning. Now you're happy to do it. So it's up to us. So this person said, well, thanks so much for reminding that I don't have to do it. And it's true, you don't. We are the boss. So all this stuff is like it's quite a handful, quite a mouthful, all the different preliminary practices we're going through, you know. If you thought meditation was simply sitting down and closing your eyes, you get a surprise. You're going to do prostrations first and then water bowls first and do this one first and that one first. But you have to know the meaning. You have to know the meaning. And then you have to decide you want to buy into that meaning because you trust this system. You trust the teacher. That's up to you. That's up to you. So we discussed last week was this first, and it says, the first one, let me find the preliminary practices. Where are they? I don't remember where we looked. Don't remember. Okay. The 6 preliminary practices. I have to find them. I forget. Mentioned 1,000 times in the text. Morning practice session, prostrations. Okay. Concentration, remaining preparatory. You have to go into them. Here we go. Maybe this is it. No, it's so confusing now. I don't know where they all are.
Looks like page 33 in the tablet version.
Oh, is it really? Okay, good. Thank you, darling.
There's a beginning there. And page 34 has the cleaning the place.
So then listen with an open mind, because I'm going through this Tibetan Buddhist tradition. You don't need to do any of these things. You know, you just listen to it, relax, don't worry about it. If you don't want to do it, no one's saying you should. Oh, they call them the preparatory practices, that's fine. Okay, so let's go into these so-called rituals that have meaning. And okay, good. What does meaning mean? This is a really important point. It means, you know, if I say to my mummy, what's that? What's the meaning of that? That's a fancy way of saying, what does it do? What is its function? What is its job? This is a very interesting point. I mean, if something exists, anything, it has to have a meaning. It has to have a function. It has to have a job. And if it doesn't, it's essenceless. It doesn't exist, actually. So here we're discussing these practices, so-called preliminary, practices that prime your mind, which means to say, help you purify your mind and help you create merit in order to kind of prime your mind to get ready to sit and actually work on the mind itself. Like all those practices you have to do to prime your body and your mind to start picking up a tennis racket, which is the actual job. The actual job of being a Buddhist isn't water bowl offerings, isn't prostrations, isn't saying mantras, it's working on your mind. But the Buddha's idea, this approach here, is that the delusions are so primordial, so utter, so pervasive, that we need to do bunches of things to kind of shake them at a deeper level, you know, which is what's called purification. Of course, these are totally Buddhist, you know, Tibetan Buddhist, I'd say, or Vajrayana concepts, purification, creating merit. You know, we don't think of this. What it's doing is shifting the junk in your mind, you know, so it enables you to sit and actually work on your mind, see the delusions, change them, grow the positive states of mind, which is the function of meditation. So the function, the purpose of these actions, these so-called preliminary practices, is to help purify your mind, help shake some of the entrenched, you know, imprints, negative imprints, and to create virtue, as they say, create merit, as they say. So simply speaking, purification is like pulling out the weeds, and creating merit is like growing the flowers. You know, so you go to a gardener and you say, I want to grow a garden, please. And they look at your garden and it's overgrown by weeds. So they say, well, you've got to pull out this and pull out that and pull out this. You say, no, I want to grow a garden. I can repeat the answer. I have to pull out this and pull out this, because then you've got space to grow the flowers. This is the principle behind this concept of so-called preliminary practice. So if it doesn't make sense, then just let it be. Relax, you know. Wait till we get to the actual meditation piece, then you can take that if you like. So this is the thing. So then, you know, and in the end, you mightn't like the Tibetan Buddhist approach. It mightn't be your lineage. You may be more, you know, the Thai version might work better, or than the Vietnamese or the Japanese. You have to decide, you know, we have to decide. Go to this yoga studio, we go to that yoga center, we go to this one, we go to that one. Eventually we find the one that suits us. That's important. We're the boss here, not Buddha. Okay. So the first one, as I said, is you clean the place. So why would you clean the place? Sounds very peculiar, isn't it? Well, you know, it's all very, I mean, because the Tibetan Buddhist tradition is kind of rooted, is framed actually within the highest one, the highest path, which is the Vajrayana. And that is really rooted in this very strong idea of cultivating devotion. And that might not be anything to do with some people when they do their meditation. You know, I think if you go to it, as you know, you learn Zen meditation, you learn the Thai, you're not going to hear about devotion. You're not going to hear that, certainly not at the beginning. But from this Tibetan Buddhist one, which is the Vajrayana, this is a fundamental one. So devotion to what? Well, to the Buddha. Minimum to the Buddha, this person. So what's that mean? What does that mean? I mean, that takes us a while to think about. If you've been a Christian, it makes sense. You're devoted to God because God is the boss. God is your creator, you know, and he punishes and rewards you. So you have devotion in God, you know. But then you think, well, the commonest thing people say about Buddha is, well, who are you praying to if there's no creator? So the assumption we have is you only pray to a creator. You only, you know, have devotion for a creator. No, why? That's not logical, is it? I mean, Buddha's like a mentor. It's a good word. He's a mentor. Buddha's our mentor. So obviously, if you're, again, thinking simple, bringing it down to earth, bringing it down to earth, bringing it down to earth. If I want to learn music, I need to find, you know, but this is a very good point. Lama Yeshe said, Buddha is dead, okay? So the Four Noble Truths will only be real for you when you hear it, that's not quite his words, when you hear it from the mouth of a person in front of you. So who is that person? Well, that would be your Buddhist teacher, your spiritual mentor. In Sanskrit, your guru, heavy with qualities. In Tibetan, your lama. So when I learned music, from my mother, Bach is dead. So how will Bach music become real for me, except from listening to the speech and instructions of my music mentor, in case it was my mum, who embodies Bach? It's sort of completely logical. So if I have confidence in my mother that she's a valid embodiment of Bach, then I'll really learn Bach, won't I? But to think that Bach is there and he's the only real thing, and then this teacher here, well, you know, how do they know what they're talking about? And how do I know if I'm going to trust them? You'll never learn a damn thing unless you're clairvoyant and can get Bach out of his grave. So it's really logical, the person in front of us, the spiritual mentor, that'll take time to develop. We have to look at people and check up their qualities. This is the person who is Bach for me. So the more confidence I had in my mother as being the embodiment of Bach, the more I am able to internalize Bach. That's devotion. My heart is open. My mind is open to my music mentor's instructions. So even it's best for me to think that she is Bach. Then I'm going to get Bach's instructions, guaranteed. It's kind of got logic to it, but it's not evident to us because it's new to us, you know. So here we are, these preliminary practices, if you understand the meaning, and if you want to, you know, adopt these, it's up to you. You're first cleaning the place. And why would you do that? Well, I mean, it really makes sense. If something, you know, if you invite guests for a meal and you're the guest and you walk in and the room is messy and the food is in the Kentucky Fried packet still and containers. Actually, that reminds me, one time I had Christmas lunch with somebody in Boston, and she bought Kentucky Fried chicken and chips and whatever it was, you know, for Christmas. So then, and she had it all in the packets, and I took it all out of the packets, and I put a tablecloth on, and I put napkins on the table, and I put the food, the Kentucky Fried chicken and the chips in nice bowls and heated them up and made it look beautiful. She was so shocked. She'd never thought in her entire life that you could put Kentucky Fried out of its packet into a bowl. But immediately I did that, you can see it's sort of like you value the person, you respect them, you give them a nice napkin, the room is nice and clean, the knife and fork is all presented nicely. I mean, if you walk into a cafe and the table's full of junk, you're going to walk right out again. So it's sort of respectful. It's obvious. You're showing you respect a person when they come for dinner and you make the place beautiful. And the house is all nice and clean and the lights are on and the food is lovely. It's sort of it's a gift to somebody. It shows, and it's an expression of your heart. It's really obvious. Well, then, of course, you're going to invite the Buddhas here. You're going to visualize the Buddha. You're going to do these practices in relation to the Buddha. So it's like you're inviting the Buddha into your house. Well, of course, you'd make it beautiful. So this first one is this I think I mentioned it, the sweeping the floor. It's so sweet. You know, there's some story of some dude way back, some poor fellow. I don't remember the exact story. He was a bit thick, I think. And so Buddha gave him this practice of sweeping the temple back and forth, and tell him to sweep, imagine you're sweeping your delusions. And he kind of got some realizations from this, you know. So there's this tradition, certainly in Tibet. Even like I told you, I think the Dalai Lama has his own little broom, and you clean your room first and you make it clean, and the dust and the altar and things like that. You make it lovely. That's your first practice. And there's the logic. It sort of sounds so sweet in a way. And you think, what's this got to do with meditation? Well, like I said, you're priming your mind, you know. Then you do that. And then we said last week, we set up the altar. Now you mightn't want an altar. That's your decision. We're discussing this system that has an altar. We discussed all this last week, you know, where you have representations of the Buddha, like a statue or a picture of your spiritual mentor. You would also have a representation of enlightened mind, which would be a stupa or a picture of one. And you have a representation of enlightened body with speech, which is a text or some words or a mantra. They are these representations on your altar. And then you would make offerings, which we're going to go into today, which is we're not going to get very far. If we do one preliminary practice in each class, we won't get past the preliminaries, will we? So setting up the altar. So then you've got your place clean. Now you will do your offerings. So this offerings, did I mention it last week? I have a look at my notes, Tara. Did we mention it last week? I can't remember. Tara? Did we go into details about offerings last week? I can't remember. Look at Look at the notes. Do you send these notes to the people, Tara? Why not, for God's sake? All this hard work, she takes notes of everything I say, and she sends them to me, but she doesn't send them to you. God Almighty.
I didn't get an okay to do such, so.
That's ridiculous. It's common sense. I mean, if you need my okay, that means you're not sure if they're right, and if they're not right, then don't write it down. Better be confident.
Okay.
Write down what I said.
Okay.
So finally send them to people. You do all this hard work of taking notes. God.
Setting an altar, cleaning.
So please listen to me, Tara. Send this lot, today's lot, and the week before, all to the people.
Okay. I can upload it in the chat box now.
You must, yes, of course.
Okay.
So did we discuss offerings themselves last week? Did we get to it or not?
We got into water bowls last time, how to clean those and set them up on the altar, and how to arrange nicely the altar, but we didn't get further into offerings.
I see. Okay, good. So you've got them all set up nicely. Just the way of doing it. This is tradition, protocols, how you learn from your teacher, how they do it. So then you actually do. So the offerings, this is from the Vajrayana, and it's this practice of I talked about how you have a guest, didn't I? I mentioned that, didn't I? Yeah, I did. It's kind of tradition. So how you do the offerings, you simply pour. If you're doing these 8 sense offerings, each one you learn the Sanskrit mantra, and then you're blessing it with the 3 syllables Om Ahung, which are the essence of enlightened body, speech, and mind, the Sanskrit syllables. So you say the word, so you get your jug nicely once, there's a little bit of water in each one, and then you pour the water in, and as you're pouring it in the first one, you go, the first offering is Argam. So you go Om Argam Ahung, Om Ahung, Om Ahung, as long as it takes to do it. And you fill it just to the top before it flows over, just a bit less than that. And each one you do Argam, water for drinking, then Pajam, you offer water for washing, then Pupe, flowers, garlands, and then next is Dupe, incense, next is light, Aloke, next is perfume, Gende, next is food, Nude, and next is Shapta, music. So it's the 8 sense offerings. And again, if we've got creative imagination, if we understand the logic of these are very delicious practices, but you have to want to buy into these. If they're confusing and you don't know what a Buddha means, and you don't know why you should have devotion, what's it all mean, it's confusing, don't do it. Relax, leave it. You're the boss. So then you do your offerings, and then you even do, you can even then do this Sanskrit mantras that multiply it. Make it kind of huge. You're thinking this. So all of this is huge. It says, you see, I think I mentioned that the practice of generosity, of giving, is one of the most important practices karmically. So karmically, because karma is the whole law of cause and effect that produces the person you become. So for us just to get a human body, at the time we die, we want one of our delicious, rich, strong, non-killing karmic seeds, which we've planted in our bank vault of karmic seeds by living in vows of non-killing, which make them very potent. We want none of those seeds to easily be triggered as the death process starts, because that'll program us to go to the next human mother's womb. We want another human life so we can keep on moving on our spiritual path, so we can move towards enlightenment. So that's the minimum requirement. But not only that, not only do we want a nice, decent human body, we need decent conditions in which we can then have the luxury to have access to the practices and the teachings so that we can continue practicing. The only reason, if you're on a spiritual path, to get a decent human body and decent human conditions is so you've got the conditions that are conducive to continuing your practice. Not valuable in and of themselves. So that means the other thing you need to create is generosity, bucket loads of generosity, of giving, because generosity is the cause of having things. The kind of karma called experience is similar to the cause, which is what you have and what you get in this life and how you're seen in this life. That's the fruit of generosity. You receive things easily. You're born to a family where they've got assets and money and food, and you get education. So then you have the luxury, the leisure to then be able to spend time working on your mind, transforming your mind. I mean, if you have to work 8 hours a day just for a bowl of rice, you don't have the luxury. You don't have the chance to do anything else. So that's the logic of why we need generosity karma. That's important. So these practices, again, this is very esoteric to us. It's not how we think. This is very typical Buddhist teaching, especially from the Vajrayana, the Mahayana. But there are certain practices of generosity, for example, generosity, that a certain practice of any kind of actions we do, karmas we do, that are very powerful because of what they call the power of the object. The power. So any actions you do in relation to your parents, because of the intense karmic connection we have with our mummy and daddy, very strong history with these two people, or one or the other, you know, especially the one whose womb we ran to at the time of conception. Very strong karmic connection with that person. So, you know, so it's a very powerful object of our virtue, being kind to our mother, being giving to our mother, being generous to our mother, loving our mother, being respectful to our mother. This all sounds very old-fashioned to us, but it's got very powerful meaning karmically. And then indeed, the negative karma we create in relation to our parents is equally intensely negative because of the power of the object, as they call it. We need to think about these things. It's not how we think at all, you know. So in general, then, any actions we do, and I always repeat this, it's important to understand, whatever actions with our body and speech that we do, we're doing them every second. What determines the character of the action, that is to say, what determines whether it's called negative or positive, which in turn is what determines the seed that's planted in our mind, which of course determines the fruit of those seeds in the future. And if it's happiness, it'll be, if it's positive action, it'll be happiness. And if it's a negative action, it'll be suffering. What determines this is not the action itself, generally, but it's the motivation. But here, in actions in relation to the Buddha, which is a very powerful object of our merit, actions in relation to, say, a Dharma center or the Sangha or to our spiritual teacher, they are very powerful objects. So this practice of generosity to, say, the Buddha is said to be a super powerful way to collect bucket loads of generosity karmic seeds. Again, we need to think about these things. It's all brand new to us. We have no reference point for these ideas, you know. This is the Buddhist teachings, the Mahayana. So that's the offering. So we've done that. So now these are preliminary. Next one. So the offerings obtaining honestly and arranging them beautifully. We talked about all that. Yeah, this is interesting too, offering nicest offerings. And again, it's exactly the same with your family. I mean, you invite people to dinner, you're not going to offer the crummiest food in paper packets. I mean, you just won't do it. If you have a casual get together with your Kentucky Fried, fine. But you understand exactly what I mean. And if you walk into a place and someone's invited you for a party or your birthday or something, you're so honored and moved by the care they have taken to offer you beautiful things, to offer you beautiful food, to make it arrange it beautifully. It's so logical. But because we're so not used to thinking in spiritual terms like this, sort of like, what does a Buddha care if they have a cake or a peanut? We sort of just can't quite get it. So the real point here is, we are the beneficiary of these practices. This is something we really take time. So again, let's think about that. When we think of generosity, for example, or making something beautiful when you offer it to somebody, we always think in terms of making them happy, pleasing them. That's nothing wrong. That's wonderful. But we don't think of it as a practice for ourselves. We don't think that we're a beneficiary of this practice. And I think this is one of our biggest problems in the West about the concept of karma. It all sounds like punishment and reward to us. And you do good things and you get rewarded. And you do naughty things. And if you don't get caught, then you got away with it. We have this very childish view of morality, ethics, but that's not the point in karma at all. The Buddha's view about karma, this is fundamental law that runs the universe, is that whatever we think and do and say, every millisecond of what we think and do and say, just naturally first sows seeds in my mind that programs me with those habits, with those tendencies, not to mention ripening in the future as those results. So don't think of karma in terms of, so when you do generosity, here it's true if there are minds called Buddha's minds that are fully enlightened, they don't need flowers, cakes, or anything else, not to mention, you know, agam, padam, pupe, jupe, alika, gende, nude, shakta. That's not the point. We need to create the karma of generosity. It is we are the beneficiary. And then we'll go, but that's selfish. Well, no, it's just intelligent. But we just tend not to think like, we think it's kind of selfish. Oh, you mean I'm doing it for my own sake? Yes. We need to create bucket loads of virtuous karma. That's exactly what these preliminary practices are. When it comes to jogging and going on doing nutrition and losing weight, you don't feel embarrassed about thinking that you're the beneficiary of all this. You're proud of it. But as soon as it comes to virtuous karma, as soon as it comes to good morality, as soon as it comes to generosity and things, we feel embarrassed to think that we're the beneficiary of it. Well, for goodness sake, don't be. You've got to purify your own mind. You've got to create virtuous karma. You've got to purify negative karma. You are the beneficiary of that. When we understand this, we'll be really encouraged, you know, we'll be delighted. So we are the beneficiary of the powerful karmic seeds, the powerful virtuous actions of wanting to offer. Offer to your mummy, offer to your daddy, offer to the neighbor, offer to the homeless person, offer to the Buddha. They're the most powerful ones because the Buddha is the most potent object. We've got to think of these things. We don't think like this. We've got to break it down, just be superstitious. Sure, if you still don't like it, no one says you have to do it. Got to hear that. You're the boss. That's why, you know, when you do the classic kind of sets of purification practices, the preliminary practices, they call, you know, you do 100,000 of all these different practices. People sometimes spend years in retreat just doing their non-dros, just doing their preliminary practices. And everybody says there's a powerful effect. I mean, I haven't done much retreat. I'm pretty lazy, but I know I did a purification retreat when I first became a nun, 3 months Vajrasattva retreat. There's no question you feel incredible shift in your mind. You feel incredible shift in your mind because you're doing these intense practices all day, every day for 3 months. The dirt definitely comes out, but you really feel the effect. And everybody has different, you know, experiences of this. Some people do 100,000 water bowl offerings, for example. They all say it's profound, the effect it has on your mind. So you need to think about these things. You know? Then now the third one is you sit down. You've done your cleaning the place, you've made your offerings, you've made it beautiful, you've blessed, you've also blessed and, you know, multiplied the offerings, and now you do your 3 prostrations, or maybe you've done your 3 prostrations first. Now you will sit on your in your meditation posture, and you will then take refuge and generate the thought of bodhicitta. That's how they talk. This is the third one, you know. Number 3. So it doesn't say it here, but you would if you did, you know, you might have done your prostrations first before your offerings. Otherwise, if you didn't, you can do them now, but you didn't have to because you've already done them. You would have done them first. So now let's look at the as they call it here on page 40, the 7-featured position of Vairocana. They call it. Vairocana is one of the 5 Buddha families. 7-featured position. So we would have done this in the How to Meditate one, unless I didn't do it, I don't remember, but it certainly would have been in your course notes. So again, let's look at this. And again, this has come from the experience of the meditators and yogis over centuries. Don't see it as something superstitious, you know, it's coming from experience. That the crucial thing is to remember, the body doesn't meditate. The mind does. But it's obvious because there's an intimate relationship between your body and your mind. That the position of the body is crucial to enable your mind to do the job, you know. So the first one, This is all on page 40, but I'll just go through it in the way I understand it. So the first one is, the ideal position that's most conducive, especially when you're an advanced meditator. And this is talking in the Vajrayana, where you're at a subtler level of your mind. And because we're in the Vajrayana model, where our subtle mind is our mental states, and they're inextricably linked with all these different wind energies, inextricably, it's just the way it is. And there are all these different winds with our states of mind are coursing through these different 72,000 subtle channels in our body from head to toe, our subtle nervous system. And the winds is a subtle physical. And so having the body in a conducive position enables these subtler physical and mental energies to flow smoothly, something like that. So Holy Dalai Lama has said that it's really auspicious to start your session, even if you can't maintain it, in what they call the full lotus position. They call it different things. That's to say you're sitting upright, and you're sitting up and you've got your left instep on your right thigh, and then your right leg in front, and your right instep is sitting on your left thigh. Now, most of us, if we've not been doing this all our lives, our bodies aren't so flexible. If you can do it even for a second, as Holmes says, it's really auspicious. Kind of creates the cause to be able to do it in the future when you need to do the highest practices, And if you can't do that, you sit in ordinary cross-legged, one instep on the other thigh. Of course, if you can't do that, you sit regular cross-legged. And if you can't do that, you sit in a chair. Do what you can, Aim for the best and do what you can. So then the next one is your bottom. So really, if you've got very flexible legs, and you can have your legs when they're full lotus, like flat on the ground, you need something just under your coccyx, just kind of prop you up slightly, that helps you kind of thrust slightly forward. It makes it very stable. Then the great yogis, the meditators and yoginis, who are in serious meditation for days and months and years, they can stay in this position for days on end without toppling over. The body's very stable, it's got logic to it. But you adjust your own thing with your cushion. Some people are like big cushion, small cushion, you have to work it out. And of course, if you're sitting in a chair, the crucial thing is you don't slump into the back of the chair, because then everything just flops and the energies can't flow smoothly, and within 3 minutes you go to sleep. So it's obvious if you're sitting cross-legged, you have to keep your own self upright, your back, don't you? So here you sit on the chair, but you have your legs, your feet firmly planted on the ground, and you have your body upright. You have your body upright, you hold it upright. So they don't mention this in the text. Now, the next one would be your shoulders. They say to keep your shoulders square, not slumped, square, but relaxed. So I like to add here your entire physical body. When we sit upright, we immediately tense all the muscles. It's automatic. So you've got to have the habit of, even just do it now. Sit upright, upright, but flop your muscles. Relax, especially the abdomen, I tell you. We all don't like to look fat. We squeeze our abdomen. Sit upright, but flop the muscles. It's a really good combination. Your shoulders upright, but relaxed. Your muscles relaxed. Your body upright. I like to think of it, I don't say this in the text, it's just me, that you're kind of like your skeleton is hanging on a hanger. It's just totally straight. Upright, isn't it? Then all the flesh is hanging on the skeleton, very relaxed. Your hands, you see the yogis all do different things, but the classic one we first learned, you put your left underneath, right on top, thumbs touching like this, resting in your lap. But you can have different ways, depends. Relaxed, have them resting. Sometimes people put the hands on their knee, the knees. Sometimes some yogis have their palms up. All different styles. Then you've got your head. Several things about your head. Slightly tilted forward is important, because otherwise you're thrust back, the mind gets agitated. 2, and slightly tilted forward. 1, 2, chin tucked in a bit. Slightly tilted forward and chin tucked in. And then the jaw relaxed. The lips slightly apart. The tip of the tongue resting lightly behind the top teeth, just near the palate. And the logic of this is very simple from the experience of yogis over the centuries. When you're meditating a long time, it prevents you from dribbling or from swallowing your spit all the time. And then your eyes, again, for the yogis who are meditating day and night, when they're meditating in the daytime, very rare that they meditate day and night, only the greatest yogis never sleep. But most yogis, even if they're great yogis, they meditate in the day and they go to sleep at night. So that if you're meditating in the day, if you have your eyes open, that all the, the light comes in and keeps your mind sharp. But and that's because they've got concentration, so they're not distracted by the visual objects. We'd be distracted because we're not good meditators. So have your eyes lightly closed. With your eyes beneath your eyelids, looking down, as if you're looking along your nose towards the ground. That's roughly speaking the 7 points, something like that. So you'd settle into that position, and then you would forget about it because your body doesn't meditate. But we're so fixated on our bodies. We're so addicted to our bodies. We think, oh, I'm meditating. Look at me, because we're thinking physically. No, your body doesn't meditate. It's ridiculous. Okay. Now this third part of the third, you do this. And now the first thing you're going to do, you're going to take refuge. You're going to say a little prayer of refuge. You just made offerings to the Buddha. You prostrated, made offerings. You sit down, and now you're going to take refuge. You're going to remind. So the thing is, if you've taken refuge formally, you are committed to take refuge 3 times in the morning, 3 times at night. You've committed. You've sort of shaken hands with your spiritual teacher, with the Buddha, and you've agreed to do that. So you take refuge. Now, often, as we all know, in our little prayers, because we're rooted in the Mahayana tradition, the first 2 lines are refuge, like we do every time with our teachings. The second 2 lines are bodhicitta. So that's the Mahayana component. So you're taking refuge and then reminding yourself of, why am I doing this activity? So I can become a Buddha, so I can be a sentient beings. Just a little 4-line prayer. You say that maybe you do that 3 times. Some are longer, some are shorter, whatever. And now it talks about invoking the merit field. This is so abstract for us. So, I mean, if you're really full-on Tibetan Buddhist practitioner, you're going to do this. So if you're like some of my amazing friends in prison, who have got incredible meditation. They do nothing else to do, so they just incredible meditation. One of my friends, and never mind. So this merit field is completely confusing. I know when I first read about this, I thought, didn't know what the hell they were talking about. It's so completely not what we understand, Buddha's, it's bad enough thinking about the Buddha, then think about this merit field. So basically what it is, so if you read Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, which is what Rinpoche recommends everybody, you're going to, you can either, you have all this, basically what you're doing is like as if you're practicing Bach, playing Bach, and your teacher says, well, you better, first of all, just remember the merit field. What you're going to do is visualize Bach's in the middle, and then all around Bach are all the teachers, all the lineages and all the teachers of Bach right up until the present, all there in this amazing picture in front of you. I mean, that sounds hilarious, doesn't it? And then you think of all the qualities of Bach and you make offerings to Bach and then you play Bach. Nothing wrong, makes sense. So here's that. But most of us, we haven't got a clue. Merit field. We don't even know one of the people in the merit field, Merit field meaning this field of beings whom we connect with, which therefore purifies our mind. So all of these are kind of, again, what is this got to do with meditation? Well, like I said, it's like the push-ups and it's like the nutrition and the diet and the jogging, preparing you for tennis. So it's up to us. But the simple one is just to visualize Shakyamuni. Sometimes Rinpoche calls it all in one or one in all. So we either visualize all the merit field, if we know it, if we're familiar with it, and just read it out and think of it, visualize it, imagine it, see them all there with your vivid imagination, thinking they're all oneness with your spiritual mentor, or you think one Shakyamuni Buddha and he's oneness with all of them. So this is my friend Henry. I asked him one day when I saw him, I said, well, tell me about your morning practice, write it down for me. So I got a letter and it was 7 pages and he visualized the entire merit field. He'd remembered it all, each one, each person, each Lama, each one back to Buddha. It was absolutely incredible. He thought it was normal. I mean, I was so moved, I couldn't believe it. It was real for him, So now, next little practice you can do, as you visualize the Buddha, you now do the 7-limb prayer and make a mandala offering. So all of these, you see, all of these, what is the benefits? Okay, what is the benefit to me of doing the offerings? What is the benefit to me of doing 3 prostrations? What is the benefit to me of visualizing the Buddha? What is the benefit to me of saying these 7-line prayer, of taking refuge, of generating bodhicitta? I am the beneficiary of these practices. Like I said, they basically prime my mind. They help me purify my mind. They help me stay connected to the Buddha. They help me create virtue. So my mind is more ready when I finally, having done all these preliminaries, I get to do my actual meditation. So for most people in the world, doing a meditation means you sit down and you just watch your breath right there. You go straight to it. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. You could go straight to Roger Federer, 20 kilos overweight, and grab a tennis racket. You can start. You'll get some benefit. But it's clear, if you have this understanding, that doing these other things, it prepares you to be more capable when you pick up the racket. Of course, we don't think like this. So it's a question of learning to think this if you want, and buying into this thinking if you want, if you like the Buddha's teachings and like this approach. It's your decision. So all these prayers are like where you create virtue. You're relating to the Buddha. You're relating to the Buddha. So the first line is prostration. The second of these 7 is making offerings. You visualize making offerings. The third is you're requesting the Guru Buddha, the Buddha, to stay and teach. Oh, so I'm missing. Not enough headings here. So the first one is here it is. Yeah. So there are 7. First, you imagine prostrating. Then you imagine making offering. Then you imagine, you're acknowledging your negativity. Then you're rejoicing in your virtue. Then you request the Buddha to stay, and then request the Buddha to teach, and then you dedicate. And then you make a mandala offering, another variation of an offering. So then the 6th one of these 6 preliminary practices is called making requests. So requesting, I mean, really in a sense is making aspirations to receive blessings and things, So these are called the 6 preliminary practices. So I think I need to ask me some questions, please. I've already gone 1 hour. My God, a whole hour. Never mind. We won't finish this module. No way. So go on, people. Any questions? Any other questions, please? Are there any questions? I mean, I know when I first heard all the teachings, I had no patience for this. I had no patience for it, I was irritated. I didn't know what they're talking about. I never sat down. In fact, it took me 7 years before I sat down. The idea of sitting with my legs crossed and my eyes closed was an absurd idea, I promise you. But I wanted to work on my mind. I wanted to purify. I wanted to practice. I wanted to develop devotion, but not on my bottom, not with my eyes closed. I couldn't stand all this, but I mean, try and hear where I'm coming from, whatever. So go on, Zalo. Yes.
Hello, Venerable Rubina.
Hello,
Thank you for your teachings. I wanted to ask, what is the 7-limb prayer?
What is it?
Yes, like, is it just a prayer, or do I have to, yes, what is it?
Those 7 steps, I just said them briefly. The first one is a line. It's either the 7-limb prayer. A prayer is a series of thoughts, okay? And it's a summary really of 7 different practices. And there can be 1 line, there can be an entire verse, there can be 6 verses, it can be long. So the first one, this is a repeat of what we've been saying, really. Prostration is the first one. You imagine paying respect to the Buddha by prostrating. That's the first one. It's a practice. It's a practice. You can say it as a quick prayer. You can sing it and say the 7, and you just sow the seeds to do these practices, or you can think of them more deeply, and you can meditate on them for 1 hour if you like. They're practices. They're practices, Zalo. The first one is called prostrating. Do you understand me?
Yes.
Or not?
Yes, I do.
So
yes.
I'm 45.
I do, but for example, because in the second of the 6 preparatory practices, we prostrate.
That's right.
So in the 5th one, that is the 7-limb prayer, we also prostrate.
That's right. No, you don't physically do it. You say it. You imagine it.
Right.
Many of these are repetitions. Later on, you do a mandala offering. It's another type of offering. They're variations of the same type of thing. And it's just a tradition of our lineage. It's like when you learn, again, your music teacher tells you to do this practice, these arpeggios, these scales. She teaches them in order that she learned them from her teacher. So they're repetition in many ways of different variations of the same thing. But it's just tradition. It's what you do. But when you understand the meaning of it. So yes, indeed, there's prostration. So that, it can be short or it can be long. The first one. The second one is you make offerings. And again, it's yes, you've done offerings before. The third is you acknowledge your negativity. The fourth is you rejoice in your virtue. The fifth is you request the holy beings to stay. The sixth is you request them to teach. And the seventh is dedication. So what you're doing is, again, it's the same thing. You're reciting these words, you're having these aspirations of these different practices, purifying your mind and creating the connection with the Buddhas, the connection with the practice, priming your mind and creating virtue. Do you understand? That's the meaning behind them. You
yes,
understand?
perfect. Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, Lou, yes, Lou.
If you're going to be doing, say, 3 or 4 meditations during the day, spaced out during the day,
Yeah.
is it okay to do some of these preparatory practices just once in the morning, like cleaning and water bowl offerings?
Sure, I mean, yes. Yeah, of course, I think we've mentioned this before. You can do as many as you like. But, you know, traditionally, once in the morning is really good. You set yourself up for the day, and then you do your sessions throughout the day. But I mean, the more some people want to do entire practices of the water bowls, they'll do them for hours on end because it's one of those preliminaries. But yes, of course it is. Of course it's fine. Of course it's fine, Zara. But even when you do a practice a second practice in the morning, like when you do a retreat, for example, which is where you have 4 sessions a day normally, you do your offerings and everything in the morning, you do your 7 limbs and all this, but then you do another second session at 11 o'clock, say, you can still do the 7 limbs again. You can still do that for sure. You'd always, in fact, there's always in any practice we do, especially if it's notice to say you're deciding to just watch your breath every day. Of course, you would always do a little bit, you do refuge and make offerings before it. You'd always start with refuge and make offerings, but you wouldn't have to do the offerings every day on the water bowl. You wouldn't have to do that, but you could if you wanted, but you wouldn't have to. No, of course not. You understand? Good. Thank you, Lou. Anyone else? Anyone else?
We have a question. If Venerable, could you please repeat shortly about offering incense and rose oils? I think that was from last week.
I know, I understand. Yeah. No, I mean, this is from the Vajrayana. The thing about, those 8 offerings, if you're interested in them, you're offering different objects of the senses. So one is offering incense. And so what incense is just a way in ancient cultures where they'd crunch up, they'd mix together certain sweet smelling things and you'd burn it. It's just a way of getting the smell come into the air, isn't it? So then, for me, I prefer to so instead of having incense, I would put rose oil. I think it's purer. I put it in my water bowls. And so then that's an offering of smell. You're offering to the sense of smell. You offer things for the sense of the eyes. You offer music. You offer things for the senses of the ears. So it's just offering to the different senses to create happiness in the Buddha's mind. You're offering. So yeah, incense you can have if you'd like. But I find that incense, because it's kind of fairly rough, and then when you finish burning it, it leaves an after smell of kind of burn, and I just don't like offering that. I prefer to have something like rose oil or some other smell, which is more subtle. Nothing burns, just in the air. So probably in Tibet, they didn't have rose oil, they had incense. That's the idea. Hello, Stina, hello. Talk to me.
Hello, Venerable. My question is, I didn't quite get it. The different recitations for offerings, and in particular the water bowls, where do we find these?
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So these are usually in the practices somewhere. I don't know. Maybe in this one. I don't know if they're in here. I don't know.
I haven't checked the whole manual we got for this.
No, I don't know whether it is. I don't think it is in the prayers, actually. I don't think it is. It should be. Session2. No, I don't think it's here, but there should be. We have to. Okay, if you, Tara, please email me and remind me about this, and I will find where they can be. I mean, I've got them, of course, in different scenarios. I can get them and send them to you as a separate thing, or we can add them to maybe the prayer manual. We can do another version of the prayer manual and put them in there. So if you, Tara, can remind me, I will do this before next week, Stina. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Right, thank you so much. Who else? See, like I said to you, all these practices, I paid no attention to them. I got annoyed, when I first started. I just wanted to work. I wanted to become a nun. I wanted to get on with it. to do things, to do practices. So it's really only these years they start to sort of make sense. And some people love doing all this. Some people love, everyone's different. Some people can't stand all this, in which case that's fine, don't do it. Other people love it, to fall into it, love doing their offerings, love doing all their prayers, love doing their preliminary practices. Each person is different. And all I know is because Lama Zopa is very traditional, he presents these teachings in a very traditional way. That's why I'm spending extra time trying to explain where they're coming from and the benefit of them. So it's up to us to work it out, you know. Okay, people. Yes, Rosalind. Hello. Ros.
Hi, Rabina. Thank you.
Okay,
I just wanted a question. I always thought it was 7 bowls, and the 8th one you imagined and did a little action.
I know, it's so curious that it's just for some reason it's ridiculous, really. The typical one is if you do these water bowls when you're doing a puja, and because they always say, oh, you don't need the last one, music, because the music that you play in the puja, but you're going to, of course, you can have an extra one for 8. Of course, you can have the water bowl for the music. Of course you can. Of course you can. I always do the 8.
And do they have to all be the same size? Is that
What?
important? The bowls?
I mean, no, you do whatever's beautiful. You want to have different size and whatever you like, darling.
Fine, fine, fine. Thank you.
Beautiful, you know, you make it beautiful, isn't it? Yeah. What else, people? What else, people? Okay, so let's where we we're going here. Now,
Stina,
huh?
I think
What?
Stina, maybe, did you have another question?
Yeah. Yes, good, darling. Talk.
Yes. I wonder if you could elaborate a bit about, I mean, you're saying, and that makes, of course, perfect sense, that we shouldn't do things that doesn't make sense to us.
Oh, no, put it this way, before you go on, Stina, if I have real confidence in my music teacher, and she says, do this arpeggio, and I haven't got a clue what she's talking about, but if I have confidence in her, actually, even if I don't understand it, because I have confidence in her, I will do it. But if I feel like I'm pressured to do it and I feel guilty if I don't, that's ridiculous.
That was the perfect answer to my question. Thank you.
Good. Okay, Stina. Okay. And all this is so foreign to us. I mean, for me, I didn't have an objection to it. I was just impatient, you know. I didn't do proper formal practice for a long time. I did my practices, but I did them kind of lazy way. You know, many people are like that, to sit down and do their meditation. That's fine. You do what you like. You're the boss. Oh, no. So now the next one for Lama Zopa would be you'd visualize, now you've done your preliminaries, and now you do your actual meditation, you sit down, and then you would, where were we with the sitting down? Once we did the sitting down, what would we do then? Hang on a minute. Session 3. Where were we? Session 2. Okay. So now you'd sit. Oh no, one thing I didn't mention is before generating refuge, when you first sit down on your meditation cushion, breathe for a while. Okay, she just says, this person says it in passing. So for many people, watching the breath is their main meditation, in which case, fine. Here, it's just one of the preliminaries that you would watch your breath, or you do the 9-round breathing meditation as a preliminary to steady your mind, so you can now do your meditation on the different points of the path to enlightenment. So the meditation we're talking about doing later on, we're leading to, is a typical one of meditating on the Lam Rim. So again, that's not what we think of meditation. So you'd watch your breath. She's saying that you do that beforehand, or you can do that now, either way. But see, for some people, that's their meditation, in which case, fine. You know, if you start, many people, when they start, I mean, this is called setting up a meditation practice. I mean, for me, it sounds like actually quite advanced. For brand new people, you know, to do this kind of practice, which is typical Tibetan, you either really feel connected to it, all these kind of things and practices and refuge, or you start to do it once you've taken refuge, which means you might listen to the teaching for 6 months or a year, and then you decide you're going to take refuge. Then you feel a bit of a commitment to the whole path. You've got a familiarity with it. But for many people, and you say, can you show me how to do a meditation? I'd say, watch your breath for 5 minutes. That's it. I don't say do prayers. I don't say take refuge. I say none of that. Watch your breath for 5 minutes. So it's all a question of where you're at and what you want and what you're buying into. Some people will only ever watch their breath or do a simple Zen meditation, or, you know, won't do any of this other stuff. Again, it's your call. We're discussing a traditional Tibetan Buddhist practice. Okay. So session 3. So the next one is, so now you've done your preliminaries, and now the typical practice would be you would then take the teachings of the path to enlightenment and you would read a little bit, and then you would, as they call it, meditate on it. This is a full-blown, basic, but full-blown Tibetan Buddhist practice, this one. The whole thing, with the preliminaries, the water bowls, the prostrations, the 7 limbs, the mandala, the blur, the blur, the blur, and the blur, you know? That's what this is. So if you're into it, if you've taken refuge, if you like these things and you can incorporate new stuff, it's what you do already, that's fine. Now, if you're a brand new person, and you want to learn to meditate and watch your breath, well, I mean, you're not going to find it here. But that could be your main meditation. It's up to you to decide. Some people will only ever do that. Some people won't even be Buddhist, but we're talking Buddhist here, and we're talking Tibetan Buddhist. So I don't know what to say here. All this is about the Lam Rim. Oh. Okay. I'm going to leave this now. Close the course notes. Okay. How are we going for time? 2 o'clock. My 2 o'clock. Your 8 o'clock. What time we finished?
Another 20 minutes.
That's it.
For the teaching, and then we have a discussion.
Oh, that's right. Okay, good. Okay.
After
Well,
we have
now let's talk about, again, we've done it in I think we did it in the how to meditate module, but there's no harm in talking about it again. Let's say you wanted to do a very casual morning meditation. You're not a full-blown Buddhist yet. You're not sure about all these 7 limbs and the mandalas and the prostrations and the water bowls. If you have taken refuge, that's the thing. When you take refuge, as you know, if you've taken refuge with me, I will send you a PDF with all these practices in it. And so we can select from these, we can select from these and take the practices that suit us. You can have different practices every day, for example. Some people choose their own and decide, like, one person recently asked him what his daily practice is, and he shows me he's got a little theme every day, a different theme. So if you haven't taken refuge, you've got no commitment to do anything. You just take the advice and decide what you want to do. But if you've taken refuge, you typically get this advice and you sort of would have a morning practice, and then you're ticking the boxes and looking at what you've committed to do. So if you've taken refuge, you've committed to take refuge morning and night. You've committed to make offerings. So you're doing all these things, you're ticking the boxes, and you're keeping your commitment with the person you took with the Buddha. You kind of like made a contract with the Buddha. You shook hands with the Buddha and you agreed to do certain things. And again, the only reason to do any of these practices is to help purify your mind, help grow your mind, help remove your mind, help develop your mind. The only reason. That's the basis. That's the logic behind them. Some people like to jump into the deep end immediately. They love to do these, what they call their nundras. They do 100,000 prostrations. Now, then they finish their prostrations. Now they're going to do 100,000 something else. Some people love to do this. Marvelous. Some people don't care. Some will watch their breath for 5 minutes, that's it. But here, like I keep repeating, we're talking about a fairly traditional presentation of the stages of a practice for a committed Tibetan Buddhist. And that's meaning a Gelugpa, Kargyupas do sati, they do variations of all these, and Nyingmapas are Sakyas. They're all variations of a similar thing. But if you're a Zen Buddhist or a Thai Buddhist, it'll look very, very different what you do. I keep talking about that today, don't I? How to listen to all this, how to think about all this. And also there's so many ways to understand. Let's do this again. We've done the meditation module, but let's now talk about again what it means. What's this meaning of the word to meditate? So in the Buddhist tradition, the Buddhist teachings, there are 2 main types of meditation. Millions of techniques, 2 main modes. And if you like, the real one is the second one. The first one is known in terms of its result. We discussed this. What was our last module? What did we do in the last module? What was it? Tara, what was the last module?
I need to look, sorry. And I can't find anything now and I'm panicked.
Don't worry about
It was refuge in the three jewels.
Refuge.
Yes, that was the last module before this one.
Okay, fine. So refuge, thanks. So anyway, let's look again at meditation. We have to keep hearing it, I think. So this first mode of meditation, the first kind, which if we look at the definition of the word in Tibetan for meditate, doesn't even fit the definition. Kind of interesting. It's like a preliminary practice that prepares your mind to be able to meditate in the second mode, which is the actual meditation. But this is not how the world thinks. So the word meditate in Tibetan, the verb is gom, and it literally is translated as the verb to familiarize yourself with something, to familiarize. So then obviously you ask the question, what am I familiarizing my mind with? When I so-called meditate, what am I familiarizing my mind with? And so then the answer in Buddhism is you're familiarizing, the purpose of meditation is to familiarize your mind with, finally, with two things. And this is the two wings of the bird. That which is true, or so-called wisdom, so-called reality. You're programming your mind, you're familiarizing your mind with reality, with that which is true. And the second one, you're familiarizing your mind with that which is virtuous or positive. Because finally, that's a Buddha's mind, a mind that's in sync with reality, delusions gone completely, and a mind that is in sync completely with empathy and compassion for others and all the virtues. That's the bottom line. That's the purpose of meditation. So in order to do that properly at the most advanced level, the most sophisticated level, the most subtle level, the only way you can do it at that level, which is when you really do it, finally, is on the basis of having the first one accomplished, which is called single-pointed concentration. In Sanskrit, it's called Samadhi. The name given to the accomplishment of this technique at this level is called calm abiding. It's a subtle state of mind that's laser-like, brilliant and clear, and therefore easily capable of unpacking and unraveling at the most dramatic level, the most subtle level, all the nonsense in order to get in sync with wisdom and virtue, finally. So the second one, which is called vipassana or insight, the goal of that is the point where you learn to get insight into wisdom and compassion, finally. That's the purpose of meditation. So therefore, some meditations are, for example, so the general characteristic of the first kind of meditation, the calm abiding, is it's non-discursive. You're training your mind to not be involved in thoughts. You're training your mind eventually to get to a subtler level where gross thoughts are being completely subdued, where you're effortlessly in charge of the mind. And then the second mode of meditation utilizes discursive thinking very skillfully and intelligently, utilizes the capacity to analyze and think eventually at the subtlest degree in order to trigger insights. That's describing meditations. So we can see, like when we did the meditation module, there's all these examples of kinds of meditation. So there's one that's the commonest in the world, and then one that's typical that people use is broadly describing it as mindfulness meditation, is where you do your discursive, you train your mind to focus on something. That's probably the meditation that most people in the world would have a variation of, and would have nothing to do with all this other stuff, you know. They don't do their 7-limb practice and their mandala and their prostrations and their water bowl offerings. It's completely Tibetan, completely Vajrayana, not made up, it's Vajrayana coming from India. It's got lineage, you know, but that would not what most people would do. That's why when we first assume we think of what meditation is, it's a surprise to hear all these strange things, you know. But if we're familiar with the Tibetan tradition, then we will be content with it, you know. So okay, so so there's the kinds of meditation we would use, sort of, for example, there's watching the breath, which itself is a great practice. 5 minutes of that in the morning can set you off for the day, you know. You watch, and the advantage from it, even if you do nothing else, starting where you are, would be that you're training your mind to focus on something, which means you're training your mind not to follow every thought. You're training your mind, you're kind of getting some discipline, and you're training your mind to not follow every thought. That's a hard practice because the mind loves to wander off, you know. That's great. And I always like to say the benefit that comes from that isn't that you might not get concentration, but the real benefit for your daily life is that once you open your eyes and go to the kitchen and go to drive the car and involve yourself in the world, you're now slowly developing the ability, on the basis of your success in your 5 minutes, to step out of your experience and be observing your mind as well as the traffic, as well as the dishes, as well as your husband. Whereas before we would just be mindlessly involved in it and then shouting and yelling when things go wrong because we're not aware of our mind. So the major advantage for most of us for doing a few minutes every morning of mindfulness is that we start utilizing that in the daily life to observe our thoughts. And that's in a sense the insight mode. You listen to your crazy delusions and then you know, your roommates, I call my roommates, and then you start to argue with them. You steady them down. You tell them to shut up if you get them soon enough. If they're full-blown rage, it's too late. But if you just get them at the level of annoyance, you can argue with it and calm yourself down. That's daily practice, and that's getting insight into how your mind is working. This is amazing. This is being your own therapist every day. That's a great advantage. So now lots of people do like to do different kinds of meditations. Another one you can do, as we described in the 9-round, is a 9-round breathing meditation, which is a typical technique that Tibetans would use to do it before you do other practices, to steady your mind. You're using concentration, but you're also using your discursive mind. You're using your analysis. You're using your creative imagination. You're using your thoughts. It's a lovely meditation. You visualize breathing out all your attachment through the left nostril 3 times, the first 3 breaths, and you visualize breathing out all your anger, your annoyance, your irritation, your upset through this right nostril 3 times. Then you visualize breathing out all your ignorance, your indifference, your uncaring through both nostrils 3 times. It's a nice little meditation. In itself, it's lovely just to do that to start the day. Then you have all these other meditations that are coming directly from Tantra, from the highest teachings, from the Vajrayana, which don't exist in the Zen meditation technique, that don't exist in the Thai, that don't exist in the Vietnamese, that don't exist in the Theravadan practices at all. Totally Tibetan, totally Vajrayana, where you visualize the Buddhas. And some people love these meditations. Even if we have no idea what they mean, we love these meditations because they're very uplifting, you know? And the other kind of meditations where you use purely analysis are the classic way you'd familiarize your mind. Let's say you're studying like this, well, for example, this module, you're studying discovering Buddhism. You want to pass your little exam, you're studying the karma one, for example, the karma module, for example. You're learning all these ideas about karma and how it works, and the 4 this and the 3 that and the blah, blah, blah. So this is how you'd listen to the class, and then typically you'd then go home and you'd sit down and you'd do the first mode of meditation, your concentration, to the degree that you've accomplished it. Then you'd go to your second mode of meditation, and with your focused mind, you would then take the material you studied in that class about karma, and you will then, with your focused mind, you will do intelligent thinking. You'll do clear analysis of what you learned. You'd think it through. That's how you study anything. That's how you study music. That's how you study math. You do your homework, basically. You think it through. So there's 3 levels of practice. The first is listening. You listened to the teachings on karma, but you're not just listening to a sound, you're listening to the meaning. You try to get meaning from listening. Then you do the next level and you think it through intelligently. And then the third one is you so-called meditate on it. So you do the thinking on your cushion. You get your concentration, and you get your course notes, and then you think it through. Well, there's 4 of this and there's 4 of that and there's this. And you try to get more and more meaning. And then something is triggered, an insight, a feeling for it is triggered. So then you would hold that feeling of it and you would focus on that little taste. Now, the stronger your concentration, which you gain from the first mode of meditation, the longer you can hold that insight. You know yourself even just listening to the teachings, you get a flash. Oh, that makes sense. I get that. And then it's gone, isn't it? So that's why you need to do the meditation, because you get, with your meditation, the more subtle your concentration, the deeper you can hold the insight. That's where it really becomes oneness with your mind. That's the meaning of familiarizing your mind, you know. You learn it, eventually you perfect it. That's how we learn everything, nothing special. That's the classic utilization of the 2 modes of meditation. But mostly in our daily life, we like little techniques. We like to do Tara meditation. We like to do Chen Raising. We like to do we certainly do at the end of the day, we do the 4 opponent powers, the purification practice, which is using analysis and visualization. And these are powerful practices. These are the conceptual ones. These are the analytical meditations, and they are powerful. They're thinking meditations, basically, and they're marvelous practices. So there's so many kinds, as we know. So what do you think, people? It's time to go nearly. Has it made any sense what I'm saying? Do you have any questions? So all I can tell you to do is, if you want to, study the course notes, see what the teacher says in this. Who is it again? I forget who taught the course notes this time. Was it Sangha Kadru or not? No. Jundrup? No, I can't remember. Let me have a look. Can't remember. You read the course notes, please, because that's the thing. Person whose teachings they are. Who is it here? Oh, that's the practice manual. This is this one.
Right. Kendall Magnuson.
Oh, Kendall Magnuson. Okay, she's a lay woman and she's a very devoted practitioner. She's been in retreat for years and years and years, I think. So she's great. So read her teachings, okay? Read them, think about the meaning, think about what I've been saying, try to make sense of it. And yeah, that's it. So we could end up with a 5-minute little meditation, maybe. The bottom line is, whatever technique you do, whatever so-called meditation you do, and whatever practice in your daily life you do off your cushion, the bottom line is each moment should be an ability, enable you to see your mind more clearly. They enable you to do that so you can see more clearly, distinguish between the delusions and the virtues, so that you can lessen the delusions and grow the virtues. That's the bottom line. That's it. That's it. Moving you towards perfecting the virtues and ridding the mind utterly from the delusions, which is Buddha. So it's like anything. If you're studying music and whatever you practice, whatever weird thing it is that your teacher tells you to do, if it is something that will help you perfect your music, then you go for it. If you do, as I said, if you do trust the teacher, you're not quite sure the benefit, then you still do it out of confidence because you trust the teacher. That's good. But eventually you'll understand the meaning. If you just do it purely as a ritual, that's a superstition. And then you take what you can. You learn from the practices. If you still want to walk away and do 5 minutes of breathing every day, 5 minutes of mindfulness, you do it. You're the boss. No one's telling you what to do. No way. That's the main thing. So let's just do a little, I don't know what, just do a little bit of, let's just do Mahamudra again, watching our mind. Instead of focusing on the breath, we're going to focus on the mind itself, which is a bit more tricky, but we'll try. So to be very natural, very relaxed, close your eyes. Get your body comfy, sit upright, feet on the ground, head slightly tilted forward, jaw relaxed. And now for 5 quality minutes, 4 maybe, we're going to pay attention to whatever pops up in your mind. Don't conjure thoughts, don't argue with them, don't think you've got to have them, don't make them go away. Just focus with clear but pay strong attention, determination to just watch the thoughts as they come and go. Let them come and let them go. No opinions, just watch, focus, pay attention. Stay focused. All right, people, relax. That's it. 4 little minutes. Focusing, training our mind, disciplining our mind, not to go all over the place. Can't be bad. So we keep moving. All these seeds we planted, if anything makes sense, then think about it, attempt to practice, put them into the mind, put them into practice, so that we continue to develop our amazing potential, so we can be a benefit to others. Jang Chub Semcho, Rinpoche, Ma Ke Panam, Ke Guchi, Ke Panyampa, Me Pa Yang, Gongne, Gondu, Herba Shok. Thank you, sweethearts. So kind. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much, darlings. All of you. Thank you.
Venerable.
Much love.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Venerable. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam.